Hello and welcome everyone to this new video about front-end development. In this video, I will continue talking about HTML. Namely, I will be representing new tags such as the table tag and the input and button tags. Then I will also introduce the entities and many other helpful properties and attributes of the HTML language. So I will start by showing the table, which is the HTML way of describing two-dimensional data. As you will see, the table will consist from a header, rows and columns. I will also show some useful attributes such as the colspan and rowspan. These two attributes will allow us to merge cells horizontally or vertically in the table. Then I will show the input and the button tags and some of their attributes. After that, I will talk about entities. In HTML, there are characters which are reserved for the language. So as you saw in the earlier tutorials, we were using this less than sign, for example, and the larger than sign, and some other characters. Those characters cannot be rendered directly in the document. So imagine that, for example, that we want to write the less than sign in our document. To do that, we need to use entities, and there are two ways for representing entities in an HTML document. The first way, we start by this ampersand character, then we put the name of the character we want to render. Here we are using less than LT and then the semicolon. In the second way, we use the ampersand followed by a hash and then the number of the character, so 60 here, and then the semicolon. These two representations are equivalent and both will render the less than sign. Then I will show also how to render other symbols, for example, the sum symbol and the product symbol. Those are very helpful if you are writing mathematical equations. And I will show also the exist and part, and of course there are many other symbols which you can render. I'll show also how we can render emojis using their numbers, as you can see here. And finally, I will start styling our document. So I will introduce the style attribute, which can be assigned to any tag inside the body. And using this style attribute, we can control many aspects of our HTML elements, such as the foreground color. So for example, the text color and the background color. We can also control the border of our element and how we color them and style them. And I will show that colors can be represented numerically in two ways using the RGB syntax, and that stands for red, green, and blue. When we use this representation, we will put the amount of red and green and blue need to be mixed to show the color. And then we have the hexadecimal representation. Here we also put the three numbers representing the red, green, and blue. However, using the hexadecimal representation. And of course, you can always use the name of the color in the style for named colors, such as red, green, blue, and so on. So let's now start coding. So this is where we stopped in the last video. Let me now create a new folder for this tutorial. I will do that by copying the folder of the previous tutorial and then changing the name to 4. And then I will select this folder. So as you can see now, we are inside this vid4 folder. And this is our document from the last time. You can run it by using open with live server. Before continuing this tutorial, I would like to show you one command in vscode. So I will display all commands using Ctrl Shift and P. And then I want to activate a mode called screencast mode. After writing only screen, vscode show me toggle screencast mode. I will click this command. This is very useful mode for us because now whenever I use a shortcut, it will be displayed on vscode. So for example, when I now press Ctrl Shift, as you can see, it has been displayed here. So if I forget now to mention which keys I'm pressing, you can always see it on the screen. Let me now clean the body of our HTML document and save. So now we have an empty document. Let us call it HTML table, for example. The tag for defining a table in HTML is called table in VS Code. If I started writing table, as you can see, VS Code shows me some options, and the first one here says emit abbreviation. I will click on it, and VS Code will write the starting tag and the closing tag for the table. Inside the table, we need to add rows. Adding rows inside the table can be done using the tag tr. In the same way now, I will press enter. So as you can see, we already have the starting and closing tag for the tr, which stands for table row. And inside it, we need to add table data, td. And between the td, we can put our data. So let me put this as cell 1, for example. Let me call this as cell 1. Let me add another cell, call it cell 2. And let me add a second column, and I will call it 3 and 4. Sorry, I mean second row. And let's save. So you can see now we have the first row, which contain cell 1 in the first column, cell 2 in the second column. Then the second row here we have 3 and 4. And adding more columns and rows can be done similarly. So let's make this table even bigger. So let's add a third column here. And let me start here by 4, 5, and 6. And let me show you the attribute colspan. Let's say, for example, that we want now this text here, cell 2, to span 2 columns. That means I want to remove now cell 3 and let this code take the place of these 2 cells together. To do that, I can simply come here to cell 2 and add the attribute called colspan and put it equal to 2, then remove cell 3 and save. So, and now cell 2 is already extending over 2 columns. To see that, let me make this text wider. So I will keep writing cell 2 or 3 times. And you can see now that really cell 2 is extending over the second and third column. This will become clearer if we added a border to the table, and for that I will be using the attribute style of the table. This attribute, as I mentioned in the introduction, allow us to style our elements by adding borders and colors to them. So here I will be changing the border and putting it to solid. So as you can see, the syntax for the style is similar to any other attribute. We start by the name, which is style, and then the assignment operator, and then we have these 2 quotations, and between them we put the attribute which we want to change. So here it was border, then this colon, then we put the value. So you can read this as we want the attribute border to be solid. I will use the same style for the columns and for the rows. So now you can see that this cell is really spanning 2 columns. Let us now use the row span to merge these 2 cells here, cell 1 and cell 4. And for that, we come to, for example, to cell 1 and write row span equals 2. And now we can remove cell 4 and save. And now you can see that cell 1 is extending over 2 rows. We can also define for each table a header, and we do that by simply adding a row. So we use the table row tag, and here we add table header, so the tag th, and in this tag we can add the titles for our headers. So let's call them, for example, header 1, header 2, and 3. And of course, if we want the border, we need to add the style to them. So that's it for tables. Let us now go to the input tag. So for the input tag, we simply write input, and as you can see, this tag does not require closing, so this is a void tag, and vscode already has added for us an attribute type for this tag, and this attribute has the value text. So let me save, and you can see here this is our text input. So here we can input any text. We can simply click inside and write any text we want. Let me add a break here, and there are other types for the input. So for example, we can use a button, checkbox. So to show the text of the button, we add the attribute value, and let's write simply click. So as you can see now, here is the button, and this is the checkbox. So to add button, there are another tag called button. So as you can see, we already have a button here, and the button has a starting tag and an end tag, and between them we can write the text which we want to put on the button. We can also add an image here if we want. So as you can see, inside this images folder, we had this smile and sad images. Let's use one of them. So we need to set the attribute src as we said in the previous video, and let's put it to images, then smile.png, and we can make it smaller, let's say 20 pixel. Now we will not be doing much more with these tags. These tags will become more important later when we will be doing JavaScripts and making our page interactive. Then those tags can be used to get input from the user simply by clicking on the buttons or checkbox, or by writing text inside the text area here. And now let us go to entities. Let me start a paragraph here, and this paragraph we will be showing entities. And now let us try to use the less than and larger than character. So now if I saved the page, you can see that the browser will render those correctly. However, you see here in VS Code that the color of this character less than is already red. That means VS Code is not happy about it, and that's true because this could cause wrong rendering. So for example, if I wrote anything between these two signs, so something such as a text. Now if I save this, you can see that this is disappeared because now the web browser, it thinks that this is a tag and it has a special meaning, although that's not what we want. To prevent this wrong behavior, we need to use the ampersand sign, LT, and it also recommended to do the same for the greater than, and then as you can see, whatever we write here, it will be understood as text. So we can even use a name of a tag. So let me show you in this page here. So this page contains some of the characters which have special representation. So for example, the ampersand sign, since it's used here, is also reserved. So to render it on the HTML page, we can simply use the entity representing that. And you can see we have the ampersand sign rendered correctly here and so on. You can see here the full list in the HTML specification. So we can click on that and see much more. Let me make it bigger. So now you can see many more of those special characters. So let's try one of them. For example, this big star. And you can see we have the star here. And now if you remember in the previous tutorial, we said that having multiple white spaces does not affect the rendering of the HTML. So now here I added many white spaces. Let me save now. And you can see that the gap between the S and the less than character did not change. That's because the web browser will wrap all these white spaces here to one white space. If we want really to have multiple white spaces, then there is also an entity to represent white space, and this entity is called a non-breaking space, MPSP. So let me add many of those. Now let me save the document. So you can see now that the gap become larger. And of course, if we want to start a new line, I already represented this break tag. So you can start now a new line here. Or so let us start it by the star. So you can still see the gap here, which is caused by adding this non-breaking spaces. And as I mentioned in the introduction, there are also entities representing emojis. So let me add some of these emojis here. And you can see we have the emojis rendered on the web page. If you want a certain emoji, you can always search in the web and get the entity representing the emoji. So now I already talked a little bit about the styles. What I want to do now is to show more properties that we can add inside this attribute style to give our document more color. So for example, let's say that we want to remove this gap between the borders of the cells. So for that, we can add an attribute here in the table, this attribute called border collapse, and we put it to collapse. And now there is no distance between the borders, as you can see, which is very nice. We can also try to make these borders thinner. So for that, we use the property border width and we give it 1 pixel, for example. And let me put it here, 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 and also here. And of course, we want to also put it inside the rows and inside the table. And now you can see that our border is thinner and looks more beautiful. In the next tutorial, I will be talking about cascading style sheets, CSS, and that will help us avoid this repetitive copy paste which we are doing here. So for now, I will stop styling this table and I will go to style one paragraph. Let's say from this page, for example, we can copy one paragraph from here, and let me add this paragraph at the top. And let me put all the text here on one page so we don't need horizontal scrolling. Now you can see this paragraph already is rendered. So let us style it like here. So we need a heading here and then the paragraph. So let me then put this tag here in an h2 tag. And as you can see, we have here the font color white and the background color is black. So let us change this. So I will change that only for this paragraph. So let me put the back color of the paragraph to be black. So for that, I will use again the style attribute and I will be using the property color and I will put that to white because this would be the color of our front color, and then I will be using the background color and we'll put it to black. And you can see, so we already now started styling our text. We can also change the font of the text, and for that we can use the font family, and let's put it, for example, to Arial to have a better font. Now let us add borders to this paragraph, and for that we can do the same as we did in the table. So we use the property border and we put it to solid, then the border color, and let's give it a color red, for example. And you can see now that the border is very close to the text. So to avoid that, we can add padding to this element, and that will add a distance between the border and the inner of the element. Let's do that. So there is this property padding. We can add padding, as you can see here, to the left, to the right, to the top and the bottom. We can do that each one at a time, or we can do that for all four of them at one time using this padding. So let me do it now for all at once, and I will put 4 pixels, and you can see now that we have more gap here. That's what we want. However, maybe this does not look very nice since we have now the color red here and black inside. So maybe we can have the border color to be black. As you can see in VS Code, we have this color icon here. If I hover over it, we get this pop-up here where we can choose more colors. We can change the color as we want. And you can see here we have the RGB values. So if we are on the red, we will be having 225 on the red and almost zeros on the green and the blue, and so on. So if we are on the blue, you can see that the blue is 255 and the red and the green is almost zero, and so on. So what I want to do here is to choose a border color which is black and the background color to be gray. And let me save. So this does not look also that good. Maybe we make this color not completely black. Look a little bit better. The world of styling is very big, and there are many other properties which we can explore inside this style. However, for this tutorial, I only now want to show how we can use hexadecimal number to represent the colors. And for that, let's see, for example, this white color. So we know that the white would be 255 over all three colors, red, green, and the blue. And that's an easy number in hexadecimal. So 255 is actually FF. So you can always use the calculator if you want. This is the calculator which comes with Windows. So we can go here to programmer. So as you can see, it starts here with the decimal. So we can write 255, for example, for now. And you can see the hexadecimal for that, which is FF. So you can write, if you want a different number and have it. Let us now change this Y to using the hexadecimal. And for that, we use the hash character. So now we want 255 on the red. So we start by writing FF representing the red. Then for the green, we also want 255. So also FF. And then the blue, same. So let me save. And you can see now it's still the white color. Let's see now that we want only the red and blue to be 255. So the green component will put it to 0. And we get this color. And if we put, for example, now the blue to 0, you can see we get a red color. That's all what I wanted to show in this tutorial. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please give it a thumb up and subscribe the channel, and I will be seeing you in the next video. Bye.